Have we been together that long?
Yes, he knows.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason Whalen and Steve Mazoff, clear back, that they asked me, he says, are you still on that thing?
Yeah.
Have we been together that long?
Just so you know, Mr. Chair, we are live on YouTube.
Okay, good. Best behavior.
That's right.
Thank you.
And a mute.
Mr. Parsons, are you on audio this time?
I only have his his camera.
Yeah. We'll try. Let's see. So, okay, we'll get going and call the meeting of the Planning Commission to order this November 17th, 2021. If staff could call roll, please.
Connie Coleman-Lackady,
Present.
Ryan Pearson,
Here.
Paul Wagaman,
Present.
Philip Combs,
Present.
Lynn Larson,
Present.
Brian Parsons. I can see him, he's present.
Yeah.
And Don Daniels.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Before us, we have the minutes of November 3rd, 2021. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as written.
Mr. Wagaman, thank you. And did I hear Mr. Larson second?
That's correct.
Okay, great. So we have a first and a second. Any comment, changes? Hearing or seeing no one raising hand or speaking up, so no changes. So at this time, all those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing, seeing none at this time, minutes passed as written. Thank you. And we'll ask Ms. Spear on agenda updates.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we are asking that the agenda this evening be reordered so that the new business under item number 8 happened before unfinished business number 7.
Great, thank you.
And I believe, Mr. Chair, that Mr. Parsons is now in by phone. So 6679, is that Mr. Parsons?
That is, thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Great, thank you. Welcome. Okay, so we have our agenda changes, and then so at this time, I'll open up public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to the fellow commissioners or myself on any topic? Do we have anyone signed in to speak tonight?
There is no one that is signed in right now, Mr. Chair. Ms. Devereaux, did you receive any public comment prior to the meeting?
I did not.
Great. Okay, seeing or hearing none at this time, we'll close the public comment. We do not have a public hearing tonight, so we'll move to number 8 on the change of the agenda on new business, the introduction of the development agreements. And go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Ms. Brunel and Ramon Rodriguez from the Planning Department are here for this portion of the presentation.
Good, welcome. There you are, Ms. Brunel. Courtney.
Hello,
Good
I'm
evening.
Ramon Rodriguez.
Ramon Rodriguez
I'm
is
having,
going to be doing the presentation.
Okay, welcome.
I'm having trouble with the camera. It's not, I can't get it to work. I tried restarting it. It's not.
That's all right,
It's
Ramon.
not working.
Just give us your summary.
Okay, sorry about that.
And is there something in the document of tonight's agenda, Ramon, you'd like me to share on screen?
I'm not sure quite at this point. If somebody has questions, then we can point to the document.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. I am Ramon Rodriguez, the Associate Planner at the City and the Project Lead for the proposal we are discussing tonight. The purpose of this presentation is to introduce to the Planning Commission to the Housing Incentive Program, Lakewood Municipal Code 18A.90, and to review LU-20-00206, Gravity Lake Gardens Design Review, a 36-unit multifamily project. The Housing Incentive Program has existed within the Lakewood Municipal Code for at least 20 years. Gravity Lake Gardens Design Review is the first project that has requested to utilize the incentives found in the Housing Incentives Program. In order for the applicant, Gravity Lake Townhomes LLC, to qualify for the incentives found within the Housing Incentives Program, an affordability covenant shall be recorded against the subject property, encumbering the property for at least 20 years. The Housing Incentive Program allows for a density bonus, development standard modifications in exchange for low-income housing. For this specific project, the applicant is proposing a density bonus and parking deviations. The subject property is located at 8933 Gravity Lake Drive Southwest and is within the MF2 zoning district. A copy of the design documents were included in your packet for reference. The MF2 zoning district has a base density of 35 dwelling units per acre. The Lakewood Municipal Code allows for a maximum density increase of 20% of the MF2 zoning district base density. In order to achieve the requested density bonus, the applicant shall receive 1.5 additional on-site market rate units for each qualified extremely low-income units provided, up to a maximum density bonus of 20%. A definition of extremely low-income household is provided within the packet. The site's area is 0.9 acres. The base density would be 32 dwelling units on site, plus up to a 20% increase, totaling 38 units within the site's area. The applicant is proposing to provide 4 extremely low-income units as part of the development, which would allow 6 additional dwelling units. The applicant is proposing a 36 dwelling unit project, which would be in compliance with the requested density bonus. Per Lakewood Municipal Code, for each extremely low-income unit provided, the number of required parking serving such units shall be reduced by 50%. The applicant is proposing 4 extremely low-income units. Acceptance of the Housing Incentive Program would allow the development to reduce its required parking by 3 parking stalls. The applicant is providing 42 parking stalls on site. In addition, the applicant owns a multifamily development contiguous to the subject site, which has a surplus of approximately 20 parking stalls, which brings the project into compliance within parking standards. A list of the submitted permit applications has been provided for your reference. The design review is in compliance with the development standards found in Lakewood Municipal Code. However, it cannot be approved until the required housing incentive covenant is accepted and recorded subject to Lakewood Municipal Code. I would like to reference that the project has gained some controversy over tree removal. Tree removal is reviewed under 18A.70 and is outside of the review of the covenant currently under review by Planning Commission. The reference covenant is considered a development agreement. Per Lakewood Municipal Code, a development agreement is considered a Type 5 legislative application. A Type 5 legislative application requires Community Development Director and Planning Commission to make recommendations to a high review authority. The high review authority would be City Council. City Council would review the Planning Commission's recommendations and approve or deny the covenant via an adopted resolution. Next steps. On December 1st, 2021, a public hearing would be held before the Planning Commission. Secondly, Planning Commission submits recommendations via a resolution to the City Council. And lastly, on January 2022, recommendations are reviewed by City Council. That concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Great, I thank you. I'm just taking a look. Any fellow commissioners have any question for Mr. Rodriguez? I'm sorry, who was that? Mr. Wagaman, go right ahead.
Yeah, could you explain a little bit about, I didn't understand at all that there's some kind of money that it has to be held aside or to pay back because of the money that they're getting discounted. I don't have it all straight in my mind here, what's happening there.
I
Is my
don't
question-
understand the question.
Is my question that unclear?
Ramon, I can step in. So for the housing density incentives program, what they are requesting is an increase in density in exchange for affordable housing units. So what the covenant is, it guarantees that those housing units continue to be affordable for a term period of 20 years. So they aren't looking for any decrease in permit fees or in costs. It's that they are looking to increase the density in this zone for this project.
And so, and that's just for 20 years that, I mean, so we'll have more affordable housing for 20 years. And how do they determine whether it's affordable or not?
The definition of affordable, and for this project, I believe it's extremely low income, Ramon, correct? Do you have that definition?
Correct. Correct. Yes. Yes. So
What-
the applicant
that-
is
Go ahead, Mr. Rodriguez.
yeah. So the applicant is proposing to provide 4 extremely low income units, and extremely low income units are referred to as households of adjusted gross income at or below 30% of the median income adjusted for household size determined by HUD.
What are those numbers, Mr. Rodriguez?
I'm not sure what the actual, so it's 30% of the area medium income. I'm not sure what the area medium income is.
I think we need to know that number in order to get a feel for it.
This is Dave Buer. We would provide the numbers at the hearing.
At the public hearing,
Yeah,
correct?
the other piece too, the numbers too is based upon the definition of applied through HUD. And it's also based upon the number of people living in the household. So the amount of the median income will vary depending upon circumstance.
Okay, it'd be nice to be versed on those circumstances so we have a logical.
Well, it's a very
look at-
complex formula. It's not, this is a question that would go beyond the scope of just the hearing. I'm just giving you information. But if you're wanting to get it into a full definition of extremely low income, very low income, median income, and so forth, the numbers will vary depending upon the family size and will vary by year.
Okay, well, it would just be, I think, good to get our arms around some version of the numbers rather than just saying they're very low, or that is that, you know, is it an unreasonable request?
No, it's not an unreasonable request, but it's a difficult answer to give this evening with this overview. Commissioner. That's all.
I'm okay with that, of course. My second question is, how does the parking that's allocated from the adjoining property apply to this application in perpetuity? Is there some kind of a tie on title that says they can't ever build more building units because they've allocated their parking elsewise in this scenario?
Yes.
Requiring.
So yes, in order for them to utilize the additional parking units on the the other site, they would have to record a covenant that would restrict them to those units.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Combs.
Could you tell us how many, what kind of variance you're seeking? It sounds like you're looking for an exception to have a few more units with a little bit of parking variance. What's the difference from what you're at right now?
Yes, the base density for the site's area is, so the site's area is 0.9 acres, which allows for 35 dwelling units per acre. Given that formula, it would allow for 32 units. With the 20% increase, the 20% increase would allow for 38 units. The applicant's requesting 36. So it would be 4 additional units.
And those 4 additional units would be extreme affordable housing?
Correct.
All right, I'm good to go.
Okay, Mr. Viewer.
Very briefly, if you're looking at 30% median income limit, which would get you pretty close to extremely low income, that would be a family size of 4. A 30% median income, the gross salary would be $27,250. And those are the income limits effective June 1, 2021. And we can provide you the table that shows you from the family size from 1 to 8, 30%, 50%, 80%. We'll include that with the presentation at your hearing.
Great.
And then,
Mr. Wagaman.
just to follow up on that, and since we're taking away parking, and we've had some discussion on this before, that adding affordable housing and by reducing parking made sense. So my question would be is how does Pierce Transit, or is there good transit along that section there? Because this place is going in where the old Swan property, right? Isn't that?
It's not where the old Swan property is. I don't think it's too far from there.
I know it's close. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I Googled it.
Right.
I didn't know the exact.
Right. It's probably about 600 to 800 feet west of that site.
And there's transit stops right out in front of there.
There's transit stops within a quarter mile.
Oh, wow.
Ramon and Courtney, what's the parking variance that's being requested on this?
Oh, do you want to compare the standard?
Yes, so the standard is 1.5 parking stalls per unit. So for each extremely affordable, extremely low income unit, it would be half. So it'd be a reduction of 6.
So you'd still have a 1.5.
I'm sorry, a reduction of 3. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it would be 0.75 units for those 4 additional units. The rest of the units, which is the 32, are still required to comply with 1.5 parking stalls per unit. So there's still yes parking.
Are the extreme affordable units studios only, or are they 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms or more?
They're a mix.
I've got all I need. This makes a ton of sense to me, guys. Looking at tons of housing stuff, this is 20 years locking this up to get it at an affordable rate, especially at an extreme, and they're looking for such a small exemption. This seems I've got more than enough information for me.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Rodriguez?
Maybe,
Yes, Mr. Parsons.
Thank you. Just one more on the parking variance. If I understood it correctly from the last answer, really the variance is only related to these extremely low income units. So there is no variance had they not asked for these low income units. Is that correct?
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
And just to expand on the type of units that they're providing, it's in the covenant. There's a table provided in the covenant that was provided in the packet, which specifies what units would be extremely low income.
Okay, great. And Mr. Wagaman?
Will we have some more discussion? I'd be interested in, Philip's thoughts a little bit before we make a recommendation to City Council. And tonight's probably not the night. We need to wait until after the testimony.
Yeah, at the public hearing next December 1st, we'll have public hearing. There'll be ample time to have a discussion, and, after that public hearing, and then we can make some recommendations to the city council on after that.
Great, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I appreciate the information provided, Mr. Rodriguez, and Courtney, good to see you. Thank you as well. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, Dave, for providing the area median income table.
Not a problem.
Great. Thanks again. Okay, we move back to number 7, unfinished business. Continued discussion on a 5-year energy and climate change implementation plan.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Buer.
I'll go ahead and start. First of all, we provide you a packet,
Yep.
and there was supposed to be another document in there that gave more details on the voting and the like, and apparently it was not included. I'm going to share that this evening,
Okay.
and then we can go through it.
Okay.
But what you do have in the packet is just a list of how everybody voted,
Yep.
but it's kind of nonsensical until you start looking at it in a different way.
Okay.
So I will attempt to share.
Oh.
What was, it was in our packet, it had 2 of the same thing, correct?
Exactly.
Yep.
And that was not the intent.
That was not the intent.
Okay, all right.
Can you see my document?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, at the very top, you'll see 3 categories: time frame, effort, and need. And under time frame, short is less than a year, medium is 1 to 3 years, long is 3+ years. Effort is low, medium, and high. Low is we can implement it at nominal cost. Medium is it may require some additional funding or is partner driven. And high is we're going to have to hire consultants, or we have one-time capital projects or changes in city legislation. So that's effort. The need is low, nice to have. Medium is addresses important needs and warrants some urgency, and high, highest priority and most urgent issue in the region. So what I'm attempting to do is classify our action items under those 3 categories. And below that, you'll see the action items. Now, I'm only going to focus on the ones that got the most votes.
Okay.
And you'll notice that the ones that received the most votes, no one got a total of 7, but we did get 6. You see that in sort of a medium green. Does everyone see that all right?
Yep. The number of votes.
So we have quite a few with 6. And then we move down to votes with 4, votes with 3. We had quite a few 3s, and votes with 2s. And that's all I included. The ones I took out and then left with these. So these become our primary action items so far. So the next piece to this effort was then to take number 1, and really number 1 is divided into 5 parts. And you'll see that as 1A, B, C, D, and E. And since number 1 got 6 votes, I just went ahead and assumed that all A through E, assuming all of those got 6 votes as well. And then I did a time frame, and this is my estimate, an effort and need, and then added up the points. Now, my assumption was that if you ended up with low points, this would be an easy assignment. But it didn't work out that way. And it came out slightly different. And so what you see here is my attempt to try to categorize the level of importance for each one of these. And so if you don't mind, I'll just go through number 1A, Incorporation of Environmental Justice Assessment into the 5-year action plan. We're not, I put that down as a 2 because we are not going to get that done in 2022. Our climate change officer, whoever that person is not coming in, coming online until June or July. So that leaves 6 months. And that, in my opinion, is an important assignment that the city council wants us to take a look at very carefully. I also think that as we move forward with tree preservation, environmental justice becomes an important issue, and the two might overlap. So for now, I'm leaving it as a 2. Effort, I think, is a high. And this is something that we have not done that much in the past. And so this is going to require a big effort on our part. And the need, I put as a 2. So it ended up with a total of 7 points. So it ended up being more points than I thought, but it is something that is important that we should get done. So the same process was used throughout this. I'll go on next one. Comprehensive greenhouse gas emissions inventory and forecast. The inventory is actually easy, and we can start doing annual inventories from year to year from this point on. That part is simple. The forecasting is going to be difficult. And the reason is because the forecasting is really built upon energy use. We do not own any utilities. That becomes an issue when we start talking about forecasting. The other issue is greenhouse gas emissions knows no boundaries. So I'm a little uncomfortable about forecasting just for Lakewood when we are already impacted by other cities nearby and I-5. So that needs a little bit of work. The forecasting is more difficult. The inventory is easy. So I give it an overall point total of 5. Emission reduction targets is a 7. It's hard for us to do reduction targets unless we know what the forecasting looks like. And again, we run into issues over the fact that the only way that we're going to see reductions in greenhouse gas emissions is through basically energy conservation. Our primary problem with greenhouse gas emissions right now is increasing population and the greenhouse gas emissions generated by vehicles. That's our primary issue. And that is something that I don't think the city of Lakewood can control. So I'm kind of staying away from it and suggesting that the Planning Commission look at greenhouse gas emissions through conservation efforts. And I do believe that that's going to be through partnerships with Tacoma Power, PSE, Lakeview Light and Power, and maybe perhaps Pierce County and the Lakewood Water District. Those, I think, are areas that you may want to focus on. You've given it quite a high priority for a reduction in targets, but I'm going to go into that a little bit later as I go through this presentation. Carbon sequestration targets is also kind of difficult. That's going to require some additional work on the city's part. It's not going to be something that's going to be ready in then 2022. The annual monitoring and implementation reports, we're going to probably start small and move forward as we get more and more information. So I gave it a 5. So that's your number 6 categories. And those are the areas where the commission wanted us to focus the most on. That's already a pretty significant work plan item for the next couple of years. And it's going to require refinement from year to year until we get it correct. The next one, we're moving down to the number 4 votes. And it was item number 18, update the city's non-motorized transportation plan to make Lakewood a more pedestrian bicycle friendly city. That got 4 votes. It ended up being quite high. And that is something I think the city council wants to fund. And I think we're looking at doing that in 2022. So I'm going to get back to this a little bit later, but many of these action items are already in place. And so when we go back another iteration of this, you'll be seeing that we're looking at future items as well as items that are already under review or are feasible. The same thing goes with item number 23, which is in line 24. Shall require new development and redevelopment to provide pedestrian connections and safety improvements to foster use of non-motorized transportation. We do that already with our development review process, site development plan process, when people come in for projects. One of the things that the council and the commission might want to take a look at in the future is to what level of improvements do we want to require for short plats? We do require improvements for large short plats. We do not require improvements for, I believe, 1 and 2 lot subdivisions. We are seeing quite a few of those. And the reason we don't is we end up with small islands of curbs, gutters, and sidewalk that don't connect to anything.
Mhm.
So I think that one is doable, and that's really something that we can do with existing programs. 53, develop plans for key commercial corridors. This came out as a number 4 item, and this is talking about looking at developing mixed use and pedestrian corridors. And we've talked about South Tacoma Way, Steilacoom Boulevard, and Bridgeport Way and Union Avenue. We have taken no action in those other areas. We do have NC2 zoning that may be very inclusive to doing this kind of stuff, but it needs a further refinement, in my opinion. The manager and I have talked about doing this. Now that we have 2 specific plans or sub-area plans underway, this might be a focus that the community may want to take a look at. Recently had a conversation with Olympia. Olympia wants to do something similar, but their zoning regulations are too tough. And they did it on purpose. And now they would like to see mixed use development, but can't. So they're looking at rewriting major sections of their code. We do have the base zoning in place to do some of this, but we need to study it a little bit more to see if we can bring it in line with economic development aspects to see if we can do something. So I think that is one that I think is a doable and initiative and with some level of priority. 53, develop plans for key commercial corridors to guide redevelopment in those areas. This is very similar to number 23, and these 2 can be combined.
Mhm.
54, continue to incentivize mixed use and infill development. You're talking a little bit about that already this morning or this evening, and likely that in the upcoming legislative session, you're going to see the state possibly propose, I will call it state mandated density requirements for all municipalities. I do know that council members, particularly Council Member Boki, has some concerns with this because it could lead to neighborhoods changing dramatically where we're in the past, they were predominantly single family. You could see duplexes, single family, triplexes, increased density along the streets. And unless that's properly planned, and also you might want to start taking a look at architectural standards for those types of structures. That's going to require some work, but that may be coming down the path as a result of state action here in 2022. Number 2, inform city residents and businesses, et cetera, of emission targets and overall progress. Frankly, that gets right up here to your annual monitoring and implementation reports. So to me, that's a repeat. Number 5, amend, revise the current strategic plan that will help guide and focus city resources and program initiatives. I'm in the process of trying to do that right now through the city manager's office. So that's something that's already underway and will be refined by the planning commission as you develop your work plan, and then will be amended and placed into the strategic plan. Number 43, which is 43A, 43B, 43C, and 43D. Some of this we can do, and some of it is going to require work with the water district. 43A, enforce the uniform plumbing code, which requires low flow appliances and fixtures in all new development. That we can do and already are. 43B, work with the water district to create an incentives program that encourages retrofitting existing development district-wide with low flow water fixtures. When I first had a discussion with the water district about this, their comment was, well, that potentially could reduce the amount of water used. And the more water we use, economies of scales makes it cheaper for us to pump. So this kind of goes in a sort of an opposite policy direction that they would like to move forward. that they may not wish to implement. But that's something that maybe we could talk about differently with and through the power companies. And I'll get into that in a little bit later. 43C, require new development landscape public areas to use state-of-the-art irrigation systems that reduce water consumption. I think that's something that we're already doing. I'm not sure about gray water systems and
Yeah.
rainwater catchment. I'm not sure if the the health department has rules on gray water use. I know that in some states, gray water is not allowed. I'm not sure what's permitted in Washington State. That needs more work. Encourage use of drought tolerant and native vegetation. That's something that I think we currently do and we'll be doing more of as the tree preservation code moves forward. Number 7, well, only got 2 votes and got a rating of 9. I think this really, in order for the city to be effective on emissions reductions, forecasting and the like, this is one area that would fall into that category. Even though it might be a 9, trying to find it now.
I think you've gone too far down, Mr. Buer. Keep going up. There you go.
There we go. This is one where I think you might want to place as a subcategory under energy forecasting and greenhouse gas emissions. That's what I think this is going to look like when we're done. Number 11, develop fleet electrification plan. As far as charging infrastructure and implement electric first policy, I need to have some further discussions with the city manager's office. As far as fleet electrification goes, the city doesn't have a very large fleet. The ones that we do have most vehicles of are police vehicles, and I doubt that you would want to see electric vehicles in the police department unless they are all Tesla. That was a joke, but nobody laughed.
Right.
And so the other ones are heavy equipment, which are really not designed for electric use yet, or at least not to the point where it's effective. I'm not sure that this is that high of a priority, but it's there listed as a number 2 and with a level of difficulty at 9. Excuse me, 8. 12, work with the Clover Park School District to promote anti-idling program for school buses. This is kind of a low priority. I think there's some other things that we can do with the school district on energy conservation if we work through power companies. This one, there's a lot of effort behind the scenes on collaboration. I think this one might be something that gets pushed up upon or up to one of your upper categories as a sub action under your items that listed as number 6 votes. 21, this is really a non-motorized transportation program. That's where this would go. So this becomes a subcategory. Again, Clover Park School District and Safe Routes. We do this all the time with the school district already. So this is something that's already in process. Update the city's design standards. This is really a part of your non-motorized transportation plan. $60B, identify case-by-case basis priority thoroughfares for developing new green streets. I think this may not be that high of a priority. I think we've already started to try to do this in the Lakewood Station District sub-area plan. I think this is going to be problematic, and if we expand it to other areas, it may not be that successful. We are also proposing the same thing in the downtown plan. So we have done it in 2 areas with sub-area plans. I think this is not that much of a priority. 69, we're already doing. Assess opportunities for sustainable agriculture, urban agriculture. There's a lot here. Some of them were very difficult, and some of them we're already in the process of working on. Some of these also fall into existing programs. And then again, back to the school district and developing school-based programs to integrate nutrition and gardening in order to raise awareness about the connection between healthy foods choices and locally grown fresh produce. Not sure that really falls into what we're trying to do here. I would not suggest this is a very high priority. It also only received 2 votes. So that's what this looks like. What I would like to suggest to the commission is we take the 1A through 1E and then go through the remainder and see if they fall into different subcategories, and then come back to the planning commission with a conceptual work plan.
Sounds good, Mr. Buer. Any comments from fellow commissioners? Speak up. I can't see everybody. Mr. Combs, I see you.
I agree. I think that's a great plan. Mr. Buer did a great job highlighting a lot of the crossovers. And I think that's something that we should pay attention to, trying to lump some of these together that really can and should be. I think there's one thing that we also might categorize or split these out, because there's several of these items that he noted that we're already doing. And so can we separate some of those out into a already in process? And then the way I look at these, and because there are so many things, it's so hard to come up with an accurate prioritization of all the things when you have a list this long. But if we can do things already in process and then ways to enhance, to me, that's very low hanging fruit. And that's stuff that we could knock off pretty quick and maybe have it not necessarily on our top priority list. I definitely agree with the number 1 item is a challenge, because the reason I don't know about everybody else, but the reason I feel like that plan is so important is that I feel like if you don't have a plan, you're just going wherever the good tides will take you. And so even though it's a 5-year out plan and it doesn't sound like we can get it all there, at some point that needs to be a priority, or at some point we need to say, okay, we have the plan. Now let's relook at this again and shuffle the pieces around. But maybe what we do is come up with a priority scale in the meantime. I did work in the city of Seattle on neighborhood plans and action plans and community action partnerships and all these different kinds of things. And one thing that I found with the city in particular was that you would work on a neighborhood plan and get it developed, but it would take you almost 5 or 6 years to get that completed. And by the time 10 years rolls around, you've only had it operating for 3 or 4 years before people are already starting the next new plan. And so I know we're trying to come up with a plan, but I hope that what we can do is not spend all our time planning to plan, and come up with something we can action on and do it. So, rather than all plan and no do, we get to a spot where we can do and then modify the plan. And then that I would love to see, and I think Mr. Buer would have a really good sense of this. What are those high potential returns? And what I mean by that is not economic solely, but what things will have the greatest impact? We want to accomplish something with each of these. What's going to give us the most bang for our effort? Is it going to be the development side? I think there's a lot of merit to that. Collaboration with other cities and municipalities and utilities, absolutely agree. There are some other things that are maybe the low-hanging fruit that are easy to tackle now. And I don't know that I have the answer for all of them. I certainly will have an opinion, but I don't know that I have the right answer. So I guess I would just toss that out as commentary and would look to Mr. Buer to see if there's maybe some of those high impact things that are readily achievable. Those are the ones I would love to see focused on in the next couple of years, in my mind.
Thank you, Mr. Combs, for your comments. Any other comments?
Mr. Larson has a comment.
Yes, Mr. Larson, go right ahead.
Number 1, Mr. Buer, what an incredible job you have done amalgamating all of these numbers so that they generate meaning and context. It just hats off to you, because you had a bundle of stuff there that is pretty amazing that you got where you did with it. My only real comment is I really agree with everything Mr. Coombs said. We can plan ourselves to death, but not accomplish anything. To that end, instead of a 5-year plan, item number 1, I'd say if we made it a 2 or 3-year plan, it would have some doable steps with near-term timetables, and we could reassess as we go and have something that rather than simply being an out there planning a set of ideas, to actually have a set of accomplishable steps. And that's my only input.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Larson. Any other comments? Mr. Pearson?
Yeah, so I think it'd be somewhat helpful to it's hard to go down the far right column and see all the 8s and 7s and 6s and stuff. But it's almost like taking the need and then a separate, adding the effort and the time frame. And if you have a bunch of 2s, then that's, whatever the need is, those are easy tasks to accomplish. And I think it'd be nice to have kind of a balance of, high need, medium need, and low need, and like some difficulties and time or efforts and time frames associated with each of those. So we would have kind of a balance of everything. If we could find, some topics in each of those ranges, I don't know, that's just kind of my thoughts, I guess.
Good. Okay. Anyone else have any? Mr. Buer?
One thing that I forgot to mention that has been a comment with the commissioners, and I forgot to mention it before we leave tonight. You've all talked about monetizing climate change policy. And I would like to make that a work plan item that's not listed here yet, but that's something that the council may and the community may wish to consider. Is there a way of bringing an economic policy to affect change faster? And that's going to require some additional work and outside assistance. But all of you in some fashion have talked about monetizing this. So I would like for you to consider that as an element when you go through your work plan, whether it's 2, 3, or 5 years. There are some things that I think are easy fruit, if you will. I've had some initial conversations with PSE. They are proposing to use natural gas differently and doing a substantial reduction in carbon gas emissions from the use of natural gas. I'm thinking that one of the policies we might want to consider is asking PSE to come in and use Lakewood as a plan or as a project to see if they can do that. That would have an immediate effect on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The other one that I think has a lot of play here is the number of apartment complexes that we have in Lakewood. Probably around 14,000 units are apartment complexes in some form or fashion. Let's look at the older apartment complexes, work with the utility companies to see if we can go about doing energy conservation in those structures. Combine that with CDBG and home funds, and perhaps we have something here that we can use that not only addresses climate change, but helps reduce energy costs for people in low and moderate income means. So that's a twofer. That to me is something that we should be exploring. And that is something that I feel like feels like low-hanging fruit. There's some things that we can do with the Clover Park School District that's come to my attention from other school districts. This idling policy that's talked about here. There was a school in another part of the country that wanted to study climate change. And so the kids went out and measured greenhouse gas emissions from their parents' idling vehicles. And they went out and prepared a report, and they showed their parents what impact they were having upon the school and upon them. And the parents stopped idling their vehicles. So I think there's some things like that we ought to consider. in working with the school district. That could be something that's also in the low hanging fruit category. The other thing, we really need to work on a really proactive website where people can go and learn about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and simple things that they could do in their own households. I've seen a couple of these software programs in other communities, and they're just fantastic. That's something that is, I think, also on the low-hanging fruit side, and does so many things about education, environmental justice. It exposes people to all kinds of ideas on how to approach greenhouse gases. So when I come back to you, those are some of the action programs that I'm going to try to focus on based upon some of the stuff that I'm seeing here. So I just wanted to add a little bit more to the conversation.
Awesome.
And
Sounds
that-
very good, Mr. Buer.
And this is Lynn, and that dovetails entirely with my shorter term goal, early steps that could be accomplished statement of a moment ago.
Mr. Wagaman?
There's a couple questions. Ryan, when you were talking about sorting those things, were you thinking about just taking those spreadsheets and sorting on each column and see what comes up and then picking it that way, or?
I mean, you know, we have the numbers on which ones were voted the most common, but then kind of taking it a step further and seeing, you know, what's the highest needs and getting some of the, you know, number 2 needs and the number 1 needs. And then, you know, in each of those areas, picking out maybe some low hanging fruit, and having kind of like a balance of, yeah, these are easy to attain goals. These are some, you know, goals that we could accomplish over the next couple of years. And then these are long-term goals, kind of associated with each of the need levels. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it would kind of give you a balance of things, I guess.
If Karen doesn't mind, let's go ahead and send out to the council the spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And you guys
I
can play
definitely
with
will.
it.
Yep, Mr. Parsons, did you have any comments tonight?
Nope, all of that made sense. I really enjoyed, I think, taking with some of these near-term needs, and like Mr. Pearson said, of breaking that out a little bit. I'd be happy to get a copy of that spreadsheet to help with that piece, because I think that will be important of how do we balance the needs versus the time frame. I don't want to take on something that's going to take 5 years and that's all we do. I do think there's a balance there, and that will be important.
Great.
The
Thank
other
you.
thing too is don't be afraid to change the numbers. If you don't agree with what I've said here, it's fine.
Yeah.
That's just Dave's assessment. It could be somebody else's assessment.
Right on.
I thought that was the goal, was to create our own numbers. So I actually did create my own numbers.
Hey, good. You can forward that to Mr. Buer too, and Mr. Wagaman.
Yeah, Mr. Buer talked about old apartments, you know, and that one made sense to me because, you know, so many things have baseboard heaters in them. And I mean, you talk about power drains, and, you know, if we look at some of those, that to me right off the top makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Miss Connie, did you have any comments tonight?
No, just listening, and all good comments from everybody to say, you know, what we need to focus on. And I agree that we need to look at something that we can achieve now, not 5 years from now. Everything is finalized in 5 years. We need to keep doing it all along the way.
You got it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Combs.
Sorry to add to this. So you know, when it comes to policies related to carbon footprint and energy consumption, I would hope that our goal is to incentivize good behavior rather than becoming energy police. And because it's unintentional, but the best of intentions I see all the time, you know, hurting the wrong people. And, you know, you start coming up with a policy and you do this and that, and then all of a sudden the rents are going up and they've got to pay for all these expenses. And that's not exactly what we're after, but we are looking for the greater change. And so can we work with the utility companies to incentivize it, or get the consumers to use less with an incentive, or what are we doing to incentivize development in a healthy manner? and kind of steering it rather than becoming the enforcement police. So I put that out as anecdotal. I will say, I've up in Seattle, we were talking about that a little earlier. I work on a project where we were trying to do something that has never been done before, and it was very, very difficult to get all the people at the table and get their participation and their buy-in to do something right from the city to the state. But with a lot of perseverance, you get them to the table and it happens. And I would love to be able to be the city that is a little forward thinking and saying, yeah, if some great idea or creative idea comes in where we can save energy or save water or clean the place up, let's incentivize that, or at least let's not penalize people for doing it. So I think, I would hope that we have the creative idea hat on all the time, and we're not so stuck into the old way of thinking where, hey, this is the only thing we know, and so we're gonna go with that. And that's me included. I'm talking to myself with that.
Yeah, always.
I'll say amen to that for him. Preach it, Phil, right? A carrot or a stick. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, the easy way is not always the best way. And so, yeah, no question about it. Thank you, Mr. Combs. Any other comments from Mr. Buer? So Mr. Buer, so tell us then our assignment.
If you would like, we will provide you the spreadsheet, and you can play with the numbers, and the additions and subtractions are very simple.
Okay.
And feel free to make amendments, and we can come back and talk about that at your next meeting.
Okay.
The other thing that I will be doing is actually trying to put together a 2-year plan based upon what I've heard so far.
Okay.
And we can review that probably at the meeting.
Okay.
I'm not going to have time with everything else going on at the moment.
No problem. Sounds good. So
That
next,
works for-
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Who was Mr. Larson? Yes. Is that correct, Mr. Larson? Is that he's going to come back with us next meeting with a, kind of a 2-year plan?
Yeah, works for me. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. All right. Does that conclude tonight's presentation for that subject, Mr. Buer?
Yes, it does.
Okay, we can move along then to, oh my goodness, where did I go? Okay, so then we move to reports from the council. Ms. Spear, do we have any reports?
Actually, Councilmember Boki's here, so if he's got something.
Okay, Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Chair Daniels, Paul Boki, City Council member. Just a few little items from our, I think, a very productive council meeting this week. We passed a number of things and that specifically deals with this committee. One is the establishment of the comp plan amendment docket for 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys will be involved in that, and you're already aware of that. The other is that we authorized an agreement with Burke Consulting to update the tree preservation code. And so they'll be working on that, and you can look at the council packet, the agenda for the other night, to see what their work plan is on that. It's pretty ambitious. In my professional life, I've had a lot of good work with, I've seen Burke do a really good job on a lot of different things. And so I'm very hopeful that they'll be very helpful. And in the category of good things come to those who wait, we got an update. We actually met the artist for the Colonial Art Project, the Colonial Plaza Art Project. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that will be put together sometime in by summertime or something. So that has been a long project, and several misfires on various things, but now it's going forward. So we're very hopeful.
Great, thank you.
With that,
thank you so much. Appreciate it. Ms. Spear, do we have any other reports?
Just very quickly, the commission has one more meeting scheduled for this year, which is on December 1st. December 15th, at this point, no meeting is scheduled. And just a reminder that I believe the city clerk has already reached out to them, but Mr. Combs, Mr. Larson, and Ms. Connie Coleman Lackady terms all expire on December 15th. So if you're wishing to reapply or express your intention to continue on, you'll just need to respond to the city clerk. Otherwise, that will be the final meeting for those 3 commissioners. That's it.
Great, thank you so much. So as well, we will get notice, we have a public hearing on December 1st. And so all of those fellow commissioners, please be courteous in responding. So if you're able to or not able to attend that meeting, so we make sure we have a quorum for that public hearing. Yeah, that would be appreciable for staff to give ample notice. So I put that out there. It's always been a challenge every once in a while where it just, the stars align and we might not be able to have a quorum, but yet we're scheduled for a public hearing, and that's not always the greatest thing to have happen.
Indeed.
All right, so Mr. Buer.
Just one thing on that public hearing, it's likely that you're going to receive a public comment from people that want to talk about the removal of Gary Oaks on that site. That is not a part of the public hearing. The public hearing is specific to density and parking.
Okay.
And so I wanted to make sure the commission was aware of that. I will work with the city attorney's office to provide the chair with some comments in advance. When in the event that there are persons that wish to get off topic.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. The chair appreciates that very much so. So hearing or seeing any other comments from the fellow commissioners?
One
Yes.
quick point. My application for extension has been sent in and received by the city for extending my term.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Larson. Appreciate it. Seeing or hearing no other comments at this time, we'll call the Planning Commission adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Good night and happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you.